One thing I'm curious about, you worked on this film for 10 years as your mom continued to get sicker and decline. How hard was it to maintain the work on the film while she kept getting sicker? It's a long project. And as a creator myself, sometimes pulling out the camera and documenting certain parts are very challenging or just didn't feel like the right time or place. How'd you maintain that motivation to keep the content and the documentation of that whole process going?
Yeah, it was hard, man. I mean, at times incredibly difficult, but I think it was just really important to me at the time to see this vision through and as an artist because I mean, dude, the toll that it was taking on me, I mean, I distinctly remember, and the rest of my family was, I mean, it was such a profound burden of stress. I mean, that's one of the things about dementia is that it's a caregiver's disease as much as it is anything else. I mean, it's so hard for the family members. And I could see, like, I barely recognize myself when I watch the film because of what it was that we were all collectively going through. Watching the most important person in our lives essentially disintegrate in front of our eyes. And so for me, I think as an artist, it was just really important to transmute that pain into something meaningful, because I think in a way I knew, maybe not consciously, but that if I hadn't, that it would have taken my life or led to some pretty, unfortunate mental health toll had I had not. I also remember during that time really prioritizing self-care, which can feel difficult. Like when you have a sick loved one, every cell in your body wants to spend as much time as possible with that person. But I continued to work out and pursue my own vision of wellness throughout that time. So I remember routinely saunaing as much as I could, and just because, like, you've got to, it sounds trite, but you've got to put your oxygen mask on first. If you dedicate yourself so selflessly to the cause, then ultimately it's going to have an impact on you, and you're not going to be able to show up as the best version of yourself. And that's what your loved one in those moments needs the most, is the best version of you. And so self-care was really important, but also I think for me as an artist, documenting and turning what it was that I was going through into some kind of art piece that lent the entire experience a degree of meaning. And like songwriters, for example, they go through an awful breakup, they write songs about it. And it's a way for them to, not maybe become alcoholics or off themselves. And for me, it was, there were moments that were incredibly dark. I had foregone my career early on in the documentary. We, kind of portray how I had given up a lot of my life in Los Angeles, certainly, a major aspect of my career by moving back from LA to New York to be closer to my mom. And so it was a pretty dark time in my life. And I think, like, between the self-care, continuing to do that, and by documenting it, it was a way for me to kind of look after my own sovereignty in those moments.
Well, some of the moments you captured, which I can imagine being really difficult in the moment to capture, are the moments that really drove the impact and meaning and influence of that film, for me at least. Like that one part of the film where your mom was stuck in the bathroom and she couldn't figure out how to open the door to get out. And just from the point of view filming, camera in front of you, it felt so real and in the moment, because it was. That's where it really was like, oh man, like this is a thing. And people are going through this right now, and I could be going through this in the future. My family could be going through this in the future. Like this is not just like this documentary that is educating, but we're along for the journey and feeling the raw emotion. But those moments you picking up the camera and documenting that, in my opinion, that's what made the film so powerful.
Yeah, those are incredibly difficult moments. And like I cringe seeing myself in some of those scenes because I can detect like a frustration and an impatience. And yeah, like I don't even know who I was in those moments, you know? Like I wanna, when I watch the film, my experience of it is I wanna reach through the screen and like grab that version of Max by the neck and yell at him to be more, to just relax, to be more patient in those moments. But when you're actually experiencing dementia, it's an incredibly frustrating experience. I mean, you think that the person, often I would think that my mom was trolling me, you know, that like I was being punked. Like, how you're telling me that my mom, the brilliant woman that I know to be my mom, can't read something or recall what she had just written on a piece of paper seconds prior to my asking her what it is that she just wrote.
I remember that part. I could feel the frustration in your voice during that part.
Yeah. I was like, just read it. And I hear myself say that now, and I'm like, oh my God, like I was like really frustrated in that moment. And that's why we kept those scenes in the film, because this film is not about, you know, it's not about making me out to look like some kind of like savior. It's about portraying the reality of dementia and how hard it is for families to go through. And yeah, I mean, it was incredibly difficult. But you know, my mom was, she, as you could probably tell, there was a part of her that liked being in front of the camera. I mean, she was totally gung-ho. And I think deep down she kind of knew that ultimately this would, because my mom loved people, she loved humanity, and she, you know, she had dedicated her life in many ways to reducing suffering in the world. Not professionally, but she was an activist in many ways. And so I think in a way she kind of, she recognized that this project had the potential to maybe help others. And so, yeah.
She seemed like she was all about it.
She was about it, yeah.
She's a good character for the film.
Yeah, she's so charismatic. And, you know, one thing that's really interesting, and I think that sets my experience apart and makes the film different, I think, from other dementia films. It actually is what has made my journey and my mom's journey certainly exponentially more difficult, but I think in a way is going to help the film make a greater impact, is that my mom was acutely aware of the challenges that she was having and the fact that this condition was really robbing her of so much of what it was that of who she was and what she loved to do in life. With Alzheimer's disease, and this is what I've learned again as a non-clinician, but you know, I've had the privilege of getting to screen the film at theaters around the US now at this point, and I've had people, you know, come up to me after the screenings and share that for oftentimes patients with Alzheimer's disease, they're not as aware of what it is that they're experiencing. It's usually the family members that have to bring their loved ones to make that first appointment with the neurologist. You know, oftentimes patients with Alzheimer's disease, they're not aware of the cognitive changes that are happening. But with my mom, in my mom's case, she was acutely aware. And I think it made the whole experience for all of us that much worse because of the suffering involved, because of the awareness of what it was that she was going through.